Hi, everyone, and welcome to the P&G Alumni Coaching webinar. I'm Ileana Rojas, your host today, and I'm so excited and honored to be joined by three of our 13 coaches that support this program to talk about how to plan for a career pivot, a career change, just changing careers overall. But before we start our conversation, let me tell you a little bit about who we are and what entails the P&G Alumni Coaching Team. We're a trusted and accomplished group of globally experienced former P&G women leaders who provide certified coaching services to any P&G alumni. And we do this as part of a bigger mission of the P&G Alumni Network, which is a nonprofit founded by former P&G employees to share ideas, talents, and resources with each other, our communities, and philanthropy efforts. Now, today, I'm very excited to welcome some of my fellow coaches to join me to talk about how to plan for a career pivot. And this, I feel like, is a very important topic, especially in the last couple of years since the pandemic, where it just feels like we're getting into this fast-paced environment where people just keep thinking about is now the moment. But before, let me just introduce you to our panelists. And our first panelist is Carol Yang. Carol became an executive coach as she wanted to provide the support she wished she had during her corporate journey. Her mission is to empower female leaders to succeed doing what they love while living their definition of success. Her formula is simple: greater clarity, increased focus on what matters, and more self-belief. Carol, thank you so much for being with us today.
Nice. Great to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Dawn Garibaldi. Dawn is a certified executive coach with extensive experience leading organizations. She helps her clients master complexity and extend their influence with confidence and clarity. Her approach equips leaders with strategies, processes, and skills needed to lead authentically and navigate challenging problems no matter what gets thrown at them. Thank you, Dawn, for being here with us today.
Thank you.
And our next panelist is Rula Clark-Nassar. Rula is a certified executive coach and an organization health consultant on a mission to inspire professionals, particularly women, to be at the top of their game and thrive in their lives and careers. To that end, she leverages 24 years as a corporate executive in Fortune 50 companies, where she particularly excelled at growing talent and building high-performing teams. Thank you so much, Rula, for being here with us today.
Thank you. It's an honor.
And as your host, I'm Ileana Rojas, and as a coach, I'm passionate about helping underrepresented leaders and women of color to find their voice, to elevate their presence, and to reconnect with their purpose, to create meaningful impact. And I'm excited to join everybody here today. So, ladies, let's welcome to this virtual space. Now, over the last 5 years, we've seen a shift, like I mentioned before, in people just changing jobs, shifting careers more frequently than in the past. And with COVID, this trend has significantly accelerated. Now, according to research, 78% of employees under the age of 40 have reconsidered what they want to do for a living. And one statistic, there are many statistics out there, but one that always catches my eye and leaves me astounded was that in the past, the average jobs that people would hold in a lifetime would be on average between 4 and 6. But as we move forward, and especially for the younger generations, the average that they're estimating is to be over 20 jobs in a lifetime. And this not only is because they might be jumping from one to the next, but also because many are thinking about doing several things and wearing different hats at the same time. So not only a 9 to 5, but also doing something additional on the side, like a side hustle or other things. So definitely we're seeing a shift in the landscape from having that traditional career, linear career path holding only one or two roles and jobs that were the same, but moving around into different ones. So, based on this, I would love to hear from all of you in your experience, because I know that I've lived through this once or twice in my life. What is considered a career pivot or a career change? Because I know that there might be some nuances there. And what are the key signs or indicators that it's time for going into one in our professional lives? And I would love to start with you, Dawn.
Thank you, Ileana. I really like how it's really interchangeable, change or pivot. You said earlier, we're doing something now and we're going to shift to something else. So let's use those words interchangeably for this discussion because it really depends on your point of view as you're looking towards it or forward. For me, what we're really talking about today is a purposeful change, something that has been thought out, that's carefully considered, that's creating this match between what I desire and the value that I can offer. But the first signs for me, you said, how would I know it's time? There's a discord or something not satisfying, either in your personal or professional values, things that are critical for you to feel successful and fulfilled. And it can start with a yearning or an itch, and it can get all the way to overt conversations and journaling about something's just not, the match isn't what it was before, and it's time to do some consideration for what might be next.
Thank you, Dawn. How about you, Carol?
I love what Dawn is saying in terms of it must be purposeful, and also there is a mismatch or some kind of discord. A lot of times when I talk to people, that itch starts with some level of discontentment. Either they're feeling so stressed out, or they are burnt out, or they're unfulfilled. But to me, that's all about moving away from something. And I think more importantly, for this to be purposeful, is to spend enough time really thinking through what is it that you want to move towards as you pivot or as you change. Because just moving away from something may not necessarily get you in a much better place. You really want to figure out what it is that you want to move towards. And that's where it gets into that deeper self-reflection around your values. What is it that you really want at this stage in your life, for instance?
Thank you, Carol. How about you, Rula?
Well, I love everything that's been said, and what I would like to build here is that sometimes we have a tendency to sort of ignore this itch or these questions that come to us because we're so programmed, we're so busy, and we just go on autopilot, and that is a big trap because ultimately, if we ignore this itch, these are the types of things that can get us into midlife crisis. So for me, the big thing is to not ignore, but use this itch, use these questions, use this dissatisfaction as a way to introspect. And based on that, we might actually realize that there are lots of things we love about where we are, and maybe change is not appropriate, but that's a great way for us to sort of recommit to where we are in a more intentional manner, or we find out that there is something else that we need to go towards, and then we can start the journey to planning that.
I love what you've all sort of, in a way said, the discord, the mismatch, the itch. I think the itch is a perfect word because there is something there that we can't put our finger on it, but we clearly feel it every day. And Rula, to your point, ignoring the itch is definitely not the answer, especially when it it continuously seems to be there, maybe not every day, but consistently week on week on week. That definitely, to me, I think is a red sign. There's something more that we're just trying to justify and to push to the side because many of us fear change. But it's definitely something that should not be ignored. Otherwise, we fall into burnout and all of these discontentment, like Carol, like you were mentioning. So what are the common challenges or obstacles that people encounter when they've decided, okay, I'm hearing this itch, I'm noticing that this is happening. It feels like there may be time to look for something different, but then something stops us from doing that, and then we continue with a regular routine, which is not having us be happy, and it just becomes into this eternal cycle. So Carol, would love to hear from you. What are you seeing, both as a coach and personally?
Well, you used one big word that comes up all the time whenever people even start thinking about this, which is fear of change. And for me, typically, I see three common pitfalls that people tend to fall into. Number one, it starts with the fear, but then as they think about all the things that they're trying to answer, all the questions they're trying to answer, they're trying to think their way to the solution. And in the process of trying to think their way to the solution, they also have this mistaken assumption that they need to have figured out all the answers before they can even take the first step. So there's that trap of, I need to figure out what the destination is. And one of the things I always say to people is, first, just initially focus on the direction. Don't worry so much about the destination. You're not going to be able to figure out all the answers. And I'm not sure if you guys have heard of the Cynefin framework that was developed by Snowden and Boone, and he talks about decision making in different contexts. And this is I would classify this as a complex problem, which means that there are so many unknowns, and there are even unknown unknowns. There are things that you don't even know that you don't know, right? And in that kind of complex problem, you need to take an experimental approach. So don't let yourself get frozen into not even taking the first step because you're trying to figure out all the answers and the destination. Just focus on the direction. That's one big pitfall I'm seeing.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Anybody else has any additional things that you've experienced in terms of challenges or obstacles?
So a couple of things I would build, because I totally agree with Carol. It's all about fear, and fear and change is such a big thing, and it's normal because our brain is programmed to conserve energy. And when we talk about this kind of massive change, this is huge energy. So we're almost playing against how we're programmed. And let's be okay with the fears, but let's not let the fears lead us to inertia. But instead, let's use this fear to help intentionally propel us into, so how do I figure this out? I think the other couple of things, depending on the type of change, one of the fears can be this whole thing about financials. And, by the time we get to these types of questions, often, we have mortgages, we have families, we have a lifestyle, and we're all like, how could that be impacted? And being able to get that under control. But the other thing, and it's related to fear of change, typically if we're making this change for ourselves, this is going to impact also the relevant people around us, clearly our family. And, one possible challenge is just the support of the people around us, because it's change for them as well. And being able to make them part of this journey versus having to sort of push ourselves through this change and having to carry them also with us. Yeah.
I love what you're talking about, Roland, I think I want to use that as a lead to the next question in terms of what are some of those essential components and areas and things that we need to consider when we're planning this pivot, right? Because it's not something that we need to do on our own, or I mean, in the end product, yes, but the whole journey, it's not something that we need to come up with the answers on our own. And you touch on two very important parts, the financials and the support of the people around us. And I would love to hear from you a little bit more about those as essential components. And also if you have any other thoughts on what do we need to think about when we're considering that career change.
Yeah, absolutely. And, let's start with the ones we've started to tackle. And there are a couple of more, I think. So the first thing is in terms of the financials, the key thing is one, just look into some financial planning. From my personal experience, having done a major change a few years ago into this career as a coach from being a corporate executive, this financial planning was massively important to me to know that I would sort of be okay for a good while until I established myself. And maybe, it's not the case for everyone, but just understanding where you stand and how long can you have. And the other thing is about also potentially looking at what would be possible trade-offs that you might want to make if you need to. And being also clear about that coming in versus having then to go into that if needed later on. So that's the piece about financials and what comes to me there. The piece about connecting with, the close people can be your friends as well is it's a debate that involve them from the beginning, involve them in why this is important to you, have them built in, make this almost as joint of a process as possible versus you figuring it out on your own and then deploying to them. But for me, before we even get into any of that, because we talked about the fear of change, what's going to be very, very important is that we tap into our motivation so that we avoid inertia. So why is this so important to me? What are the values that I want to honor? What are the how does it help me in delivering against the impact I want my life to create? So I think that needs to continuously be present because the challenges will happen and you want to make sure that it doesn't stand in your way. And, and the last, there are many more, but in the interest of time, the last thing I'm going to call out is the mindset. So really boosting our mindset so that we can pursue this with confidence, using some mental practice, understanding what success looks like, seeing it while you're taking action. Let's not live in, dreams land, but let's make sure that we do mental practice and be, as clear as possible on what is the process we want to go forward and what is success in the different steps we're going after. One at a time, no overwhelm.
Thank you. And very importantly, I want to call out again that this is not something that you need to do on your own. The journey of defining and coming up with the answers. There definitely reach out to coaches like us, like many others that can help you along the way. Because sometimes I know that I speak to the mirror and I still haven't found a mirror that can answer back. But definitely talking to other people can help you in finding the answers to these questions. So Dawn, and I know that you and I have talked about this, this topic many times in the past in terms of the importance of networking, not only for when you do a career change, but just in general, and how it plays a crucial role in terms of helping us in these career transitions. But networking is not something that we can do from one day to the other. It's something that you need to, plan, that you need to intentionally know how to do, to build those meaningful connections, and being able to consistently expand our network, even though we might not know that we need it now or what we want to do in the future, but we know that that's important. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to pick up on the word that you said about nurturing, because I think too often we hear networking and it has a bit of a negative connotation, like I'm going out to get something, right? I'm trying to pick up whatever low-hanging fruit there is that serves my immediate need. And I'd like to switch that to more of your term of nurturing. I think networking even starts in this: what do I not know? What do I need to know that I don't know? Take rule as why. Take this itch. There's something between the itch and the why. And how do I create those conversational experiments? How do I create, we'll use the word network, but really, what's that garden? What's that field that I want to nurture, where there's information for me, there's sounding boards for me, there's inspiration for me. I will tell you, I made a massive change in my career from sales to logistics to manufacturing up into engineering. And none of that would never have happened if I hadn't already been nurturing that field of resources that were sounding boards for me. Earlier in my most recent transition, it was the Johnny Appleseed concept, right? All those contacts I'm making, even to gather information or to offer my own help, are planting seeds that years later come back and continue to bear fruit. And I think I see everybody nodding in often unexpected but delightful ways. So this is not about short-term picking fruit. This is about the Johnny Appleseed of making sure that there's a nurturing in those relationships. Some maybe once or twice a year, but if they're authentic and they're shared from both my ability to gain knowledge and my ability to offer value to the others, those payouts just start to snowball from either I'm thinking about a change to now I have to map a change.
I love that. Love that. Thank you. So we talked about the fear, we talked about the motivation, we talked about the network, all of these different things that we need to keep in mind. But I know, again, after going personally through a big career shift and talking to my clients, that once you're in this path, once you're starting to look for new roles, new jobs, new opportunities, the same question keeps coming up, that it is, you have a gap. You have a gap in experience. You have never done this before in the past. Why do you want to do it right now? And then that in turn then becomes sort of a barrier, which is it's a belief, but it keeps coming up in terms of questions that we don't have experience or we don't have the qualifications that are needed for certain roles. So how do you suggest that people go about addressing these potential gaps when looking for this career pivot or these career changes? And I would love to start with you, Carol.
Well, I think, first of all, it's being very intentional, right? So I would say you really require two things. Number one is be very intentional with what is it that you're trying to do here. And then number two, very importantly, is give yourself the runway, because depending on whether it's a pivot, as in a slight adjustment, you're doing the same thing but in a different industry, or it's a complete change like all four of us have done, where we're no longer corporate executives and we're now an executive coach, and that's a complete change. You need a runway, because in some instances you might need to take a little bit of a step back in order to leap forward. And that step back could be a step back in terms of having to learn some new skills, like all of us did. In order to be certified professional coaches, we all went through training and coaching schools and learned a whole bunch of new skills that we didn't learn when we were in corporate. Most of us didn't, at least, right? And that takes a bit of runway. So I think number one is just being very, very intentional that, yep, I'm now past the point of it's an itch and I just want to leave it alone, to now I want to do something about the itch and I want to see how real this is. right? So get enough clarity with regards to the direction that you want to head towards, not necessarily maybe the destination, because that will reveal itself over time, but at least the direction. Put together strategy, and that strategy will involve a financial strategy, like Rula said, because you have to decide what are some of your trade-offs that you're willing to put up with in the short term, what mistakes maybe that you're willing to make, because you will stumble a little bit here and there. um, what's non-negotiable as part of your strategy, right, of this new life that you're trying to create for yourself, that's going to be better. That's the moving towards part, not just moving away. What is this better life that you want to move towards? So what's the strategy to get there? And then as part of the runway, the third part is, what's the testing and learning plan in order to get there, right? So this new thing that you're trying to pivot or change to could take 2 years, 3 years. In some cases, maybe 6 months. In some cases, maybe more. So work out a plan. Use all the experience and skills that you've got in terms of putting a plan together. This is a plan for your life and your career, and start executing it. So, I would say those are the key things.
Thank you. What about you, Rula?
So I love what's been said. What I would add is think through also what you're really strong at, because we're talking about what are we going to grow into, what do we need to develop, what needs to change. But at the base, hopefully, is an understanding of what is your magic power that you are going to tap into to help you make progress towards this aim that you're going after, and being very intentional about how you're going to harness this ongoing, because we all have to develop in so many areas, but the biggest gains that we will get are from being very intentional about using what comes to us very naturally.
Thank you. Dawn?
I really, the one that just keeps resonating with me is, don't discount yourself. If you're here in this call as a P&G alumni, you already have phenomenal skills and you offer tremendous value on many vectors. No matter what that next direction is, choosing the direction is certainly important. But even if you feel that's 180 degrees shift from where you've been before, there are a lot of skills, credibility, history, experience that will create value in whatever that direction is. So whoever helps you land is going to be delighted.
Thank you. And one thing that I would like to add to everything that's been said is, sometimes we feel that we need to learn these things after the fact. Like, once I've decided I'm going to then, go to certifications or training or learning in a different way. And I would add, sometimes we discount then when we volunteer for certain projects, when we volunteer as an advisor, maybe serve in a board, we learn new skills and new industry and new experiences in those as well. So something also to keep in mind. So, any final words of nugget wisdom that our audience can take away as we head into these last couple of minutes for today? Rula.
So for me, the first thing comes to mind is stay connected to yourself. Don't just wait for the itch, but do regular check-ins. How am I feeling? What is working? What is working less? And you know what? Sometimes this may, just as we said, get us to recommit to where we are, albeit maybe making small changes, or it can lead us to a bigger change. But ultimately, what you're doing is you are then leading your life, then letting life lead you. So stay connected to yourself.
Thank you. Dawn?
Hey, this is about chapters in life, and the fundamental answers for what that chapter is going to be lie within you. And so I agree with Rula. Pay attention and notice what lights you up, what doesn't, what's the work you have to be paid to do, what's the work you would do for free. Because the better you know yourself that way, then to Carol's point, the better you design your experiments. You go get information. Take on some low-cost probes, something you can try out, try on like a cloak, but if you don't like it, you can take it off. No harm done, lots of new information for that experience. So it's possible if you want it, and you may be able to find it right where you are.
Thank you. Carol?
I will end with a favorite quote of mine by Henry David Thoreau, which is go confidently in the direction of your dreams, live the life you have always imagined. I think just don't sell yourself short. If there is something, if there is an itch, scratch it. Go try a few things. And see what works out, right? And, just keep experimenting. And it might take a while for you to get there. But I think the four of us sitting here in this conversation is proof that it is possible if you want to pivot or change. It might take a while. It might take a lot of effort, but it is possible. So don't give up,
I love that. If there's a niche, scratch it. Definitely. I think that's going to be the next quote. And I think it's very important to what all of you are saying. We can do it at any point in our lives, because I also hear, oh my God, I'm almost in my 50s or in my 40s or getting into my 60s. Like, it's too late to change, and it's never too late to change. So I think we've seen examples out there again and again and again of people just reinventing themselves. So definitely, if there's an itch, scratch it. Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you so much, Don, Rula, for joining me in this powerful conversation that I hope has left all of our audience with great tips and advice, and knowing that you're not alone on this journey, even though the decision has to be made by you in the end. You don't have to go through it on your own. So reach out to us to help us, or reach out to any coach to help you think about your next career pivot. If you have any questions on this or any other relevant topics, sign up for your free consultation at coaching.pgalums.com. Through this program, you have access to a 30-minute discovery call with all of us. So feel free to do that. This is Ileana Rojas, your host today for the P&G Alumni Coaching webinar. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day wherever in the world you are. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ileana.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ileana. Thank you, everyone.